I remember that day like it was yesterday. And I remember you came up to me afterwards and you were like, Sophia, you played so well. I was like, Sam, no,
Oh,
no, I didn't, but thank you so much. I was like, thanks. That means everything to me.
today on the podcast, we have the singular Sofia Huerta, defender on loan in Lyon right now from Seattle Reign, member of the 2023 US World Cup team. She is bringing a whole new definition to the word international player, having played club football in 3 countries, and yes, national team football for 2 countries, Mexico and the US. Sophia, welcome to the women's game.
Oh my gosh, Sam, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
I am so excited to hear everything. I know there's like this small contingent of US players playing in the French league right now, including your Lyon teammate, US women's national team captain Lindsey Horan. We know France is like known for its art and culture and cuisine, but is there anything that you guys really find yourselves missing from the States?
Oh my gosh, I miss a lot of things from the States. I mean, personally, I obviously miss being in Seattle and with my fiance and with my dog. I'm not gonna lie, I miss Sweetgreen. They don't have that here. The food is a little different. I do really enjoy living abroad. I do. I never thought I would live in Europe, to be honest, because as you mentioned, like I did live in Australia. But that culturally isn't that different,
Mm-hmm.
especially because you're speaking the same language. So this is like very, very different than what I'm used to. So I'm missing some things, but it's all good.
I know. I also just feel like, I mean, you never know. You could do anything, but you never know if you're going to like live in France again in your whole life. So I just feel like it's fun and cool and hard and easy and everything. And it's just like kind of the whole ride.
Being from Boise, Idaho, this is just so different than what I grew up with, what I ever expected. Like, it's just something that I didn't grow up around. And so being able to be exposed to a different culture and then obviously playing in the league, I played in the NWSL for 10 years. So being elsewhere is like also really awesome and fascinating. So I've like really been liking it and it's definitely different.
We're going to get into all of this. I'm really excited, but I actually want to kind of start at the beginning and tell a little bit of your story. I know that a lot of your journey has been defined by your kind of childhood interactions, watching the US women's national team on TV, your memories of wanting to be on the team. We read that you actually wrote down as a kid that your dream was to play for the US women's national team. Obviously, I relate to this so much. Like my memories of watching the 1999 Women's World Cup are so clear. My desire to be on the team like started, and that was all I could ever think about. What was it for you about watching the team that made you like lock in at a young age and really aspire to make it?
Yeah, I think we have like literally the same experience. Watching the 99ers play is a core memory. Watching Brandy Chastain rip off her shirt and watching Mia Hamm score like countless goals over and over again, those are the two players who caught my eyes. Like I just wanted to be just like them. And, speaking on that, that's why exposure to women's sports is so important because think of the generation it inspired watching them play. You and me watching them play, probably one of the first games we've ever seen on TV. And then our whole lives changed, and then we became professional soccer players. Like, it is actually kind of a trip to think about.
It's so crazy. I remember always feeling when I would sign autographs, like I got like a couple of autographs when I was a young kid at Gillette Stadium. Maybe it was the Breakers playing, maybe the national team. I was so young, I don't remember exactly what the game was. And I remember how bad I wanted a player's autograph. I got Cindy Parlow's autograph. I framed it. And then when I was like signing autographs on the national team, I remember being like, oh my God, I just like did for somebody what was done for me, what made me so hungry and like so eager to make it and so driven. I might have just like given that to somebody and it was so full circle.
Yeah, you absolutely did do that for many, many, many young kids, for sure. And like, I have the same experience. I remember, the US was playing in Utah, which was like a 5-hour drive from Boise. And my parents so kindly drove me there. And same thing, I'm just waiting for the players to come over and sign my whatever I had, a piece of paper or a jersey. And when they did it, it was the best feeling. So I always kind of made that a point. Like I would go around and sign people's, items, especially if it was like a wear to jersey, because I'm like, okay, You literally came here for me. I'm gonna go out of my way and sign your jersey
Yeah.
because it just meant so much to us when we were younger. So
Yeah.
we understand that and want to give back in that way. But yeah, definitely watching them play was such an inspiration. And yeah, I think probably the next day I wrote down on a piece of paper that I wanted to be a professional soccer player. I wanted to go to the World Cup, wanted to go to the Olympics. And as you mentioned, that was like my obsession moving forward. And there were definitely like bumps in the road. It was always like I had that goal and I wanted to achieve that no matter what got in my way.
I have a lot of questions here about maybe the ups and downs of that journey. You mentioned already that you grew up in Boise, Idaho, and I know that your dad was really insistent on keeping you connected to your Mexican heritage. What are some of your early memories of your dad and how he was instilling being Mexican American in you at a young age?
Yeah, my parents did a really good job of doing that. I mean, I don't think they expected to move the family to Idaho. That was kind of random. I mean, it had to do with my dad's job. He's an engineer. Him and my mom were living in Mexico, and my sister was born there. And then, they randomly got to Idaho. Like, we had no ties there. So I'm not sure they were aware of what we were really getting into because, I was thinking about this, and this always comes up. Like, how was it, being Mexican in Idaho? And my answer is always like, it was such an experience. It was such a unique experience because where I grew up, it lacked so much diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just not aware of that, obviously, until I left Idaho and realized that, like, there's more out there. There's all these different kinds of people. And, that's just not what I was exposed to when I was younger. And so the way that my dad and my mom, I think, helped really have us like embrace our culture was going to Mexico a couple times a year. So we would always go in the summer and we would always go during Christmas. We loved doing that. But to be honest, like my culture in Idaho is very difficult. Like my environment did not allow me to foster that. And so when my dad would take us to Mexico, that's how I was able to really feel connected to that and to embrace that. But then I would go back to Idaho and I really just wanted to fit in. And I would, just not really embrace that side of me, honestly, until I was like a bit older. Probably not until I played for Mexico was I really able to like understand how proud I was to be Mexican American, how important it was to my family, and also just like to inspire that community. And that's actually something that I learned in the 2023 World Cup because I was one of three Latinas on that team. And I know that we played such a significant role.
What I find so like powerful and interesting about what you're saying is really that your whole journey living in Idaho, being Mexican American, having your heritage kind of instilled in you, traveling to Mexico, and then playing for Mexico, and then playing for the US, all of it really has contributed now to your what it sounds like your sense and identity as Mexican American. And again, I want to go through all of this. I know I just really jumped ahead and told your whole story. So I want to go back to being a kid. I feel like there's maybe this like underlying theme in your career, and just correct me if you don't feel this way, where maybe you've like flown under the radar at times. And I'm wondering where you feel that started. Maybe when you were in your high school years, you didn't receive invites to U.S. youth national team camps, but you did receive invitations to Mexican youth national team camps. Did this feel like a rejection from the U.S. team? Was that something you carried with you, this feeling of not getting called into the U.S. team?
Okay, well, Sam, I just want you to know I feel so seen by you. Like, you're being like, you,
I didn't want to like insult you, but I was like, it's not an insult.
Not at all.
Okay.
Not at all. I actually feel like I love that that is your perception of me. And it's true. I was thinking about this earlier. Like, I don't know if people quite understand what it was like as like a youth soccer player in Boise, Idaho. I mean, I'm sure it's changed now because I've been a pro for a long time. Obviously, I'm, in my 30s. And so I'm hoping it's changed and it's evolved in Boise. But growing up, I did not have the resources or just the infrastructure in youth soccer in Boise was not there yet. The competition, like I was not developing, I would say, if I'm comparing myself just to probably someone who's like from California. Like I just was not developing in the way that I wish I would have when I was younger and focusing just on soccer because it wasn't there. And because of the weather too, like I only played soccer 3 months out of the year. And then I played basketball, I ran track, I swam, I played volleyball. Like I was all over the place. I was doing a lot of sports. I knew soccer was like my favorite and I loved it. And I did find success early on. It just was not something I focused on all year round. It's not that I was a late bloomer. I just think that when I got noticed by college coaches, it wasn't until I was a junior in high school. And at that point, you guys had already been committed for 2 years. Like I remember I wanted to go to UCLA. I wanted to go to California, LA. I wanted to go to LA so bad. I wanted to go to UCLA. And I remember my club coach and Jill had had some conversations and she was like, we like her, but we already have that class and we have
Oh,
no money left. And that's fair because, people are getting recruited. Obviously it's changed. The landscape has changed, but I feel like you guys committed when you were freshman, sophomore. Me going on my first unofficial visit as a junior, I was really, really late.
yeah.
So like that opportunity was already, I was already falling a little bit behind.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to go to Stanford, but because I wasn't with the youth national teams,
Right.
I wasn't going to get a full ride at Stanford, and my family could not afford to send me to Stanford without a full ride. So Santa Clara, I'm so thankful, but they were certainly not in my top five. But I'm really happy. I'm really happy I ended up going there because it was so much fun. I grew so much and I loved playing under Jerry and Brandy. And just being at Santa Clara was such a good experience for me. But I was so not at the level that I should have been, I think, going into college. And that was like pretty clear for me right away. And when I really first realized that, I played on the Idaho ODP team, but not a lot of people like had the goal that we had of being on the national team. And so there weren't enough girls to play on the Idaho state team. So I had to go with the United team. I don't even know if you remember this or
What's
if
the
like
United team?
so the United team was just another team that was made up of usually because, each state got 18 players to make a team. But obviously California had more players than 18 who were at
Oh.
a higher level, but you could only have 18. So the United team was a team, made up of usually some SoCal girls, NorthCal girls, and then people like me who didn't have a team to go to the regional camp with. So I remember when I went to regional camp and I did get held over. So that was
Which is a good
exciting.
thing. It means you like made it to the next round.
Yes, I made it to the next round. And then I got called into the first national team camp for my age group. And I remember going there and I was seeing players do like Cruyffs and scissors. And I was like, I am not ready to be here. I don't know how I got here, but I'm not ready. And then I was never called into any other youth camps. But I made my way. I got to Santa Clara. I realized that technically I was behind. And what I did every day was stay after training and just work. Then I get drafted in 2015 to Chicago, second round, number 11. And were we drafted the same year? We were, right?
Yeah, I was gonna
Yes, we
say like
were.
we're very similar in age, so a lot of our like
Yes.
paths are parallel. We got drafted in
Actually,
2015 the same year.
yeah, I actually think you might have been the person at camp doing like the Cruyffs and stuff. And I was like,
You know, I could
you're
have,
too
I
good.
definitely could have been that person. I don't know. I did get called into a lot of youth national team camps.
I think it was
I
you, Sam.
It could have, yeah. Croy, Sam doing the Cribs all the time. I do want to ask about your first year with Chicago after the draft, but before we get to that, I know
Yes.
you played for Mexico at the U20 World Cup in 2012, which I also played in, by the way. Again, our paths are
Yes, I
just kind
remember. Of
of
course, I know.
flying along together. Shortly after that, you were called up to the senior team for Mexico, with which you ended up earning 5 caps. And right around the time you were, it sounds like finishing college, about to get drafted into the NWSL, you decided to step away from Mexico, that you didn't want to play for the Mexican national team anymore. Can you just talk about that decision a little bit? It just sets such a stage for what's to come in your career, and a little bit of like the mentality of what you wanted and maybe why the Mexican team wasn't the right place for you.
I had got called into the U20 youth national team right before the World Cup, and it wasn't ever my dream. As you know, was always to play for the US. But my coach, Jerry at Santa Clara, was like, "You never want to burn a bridge. Just go see how it is going to those camps and how it feels for you." And I said, okay, I was young and I'm going to listen to my mentor. And I felt like it was important for me to go experience that anyway. I always wanted to play internationally. I also was aware that if I played on the youth level, that it didn't mean I couldn't play for the US senior pole team at one point. So I definitely want to do that. So I went to the U20 World Cup. It was a really good experience. I really did love my time with Mexico. And then obviously I got called into the full team. And I remember we actually played the US
Mm-hmm.
in one of the games. We lost 8-0. I started on the bench, and that is not the reason why I then declined invitations to Mexico. I had already been feeling that inside of me. Like, despite what people said, I just knew that leading up to this point, I wasn't really given the best chance to succeed. Like I said, I never played soccer year round. When I got, college, it's hard. You play 3 months out of the year, and then you have some trainings in the winter, you have some games in the spring. I was never playing soccer year round, ever once in my life. And even when I got to the pros, that's when the league was only 6 months long.
Right.
And
And
yeah,
we were training
crazy.
in the winter in the off season on treadmills for months.
It
This
was
is like
horrible.
2015.
I know. I know. So it's like I knew that if I was really given the resources, which in my mind was like playing soccer all year round and, doing everything that I could do in my control, making the right decisions, being a professional, all of these things. I knew that I was capable of making the US team. Like I just believed that, but no one else really believed that other than like Jerry Smith, who was my coach at Santa Clara. He obviously saw me play every day, and so he knew the potential I had and the talent that I had. But I knew it was up to me. I needed to have the right mindset. I needed to be making the right decisions. Like I had the potential, but it was up to me. And I had never really fully like committed to that. I guess I just didn't even really understand the concept of like mindset and like being a professional. I just, I went to college and I was like having a good time. And then, I went into the pros and there was a lot of things that were happening there. But it was just difficult for me to really know what it would be like if I did everything that I could. But I just knew. And so when Mexico kept inviting me into camps, I just respectfully declined and said, you know, I loved playing for Mexico, but my dream was to play for the US. And I think when people ask me, like, was that a difficult decision? It wasn't. It was not. It was difficult in the sense that I did not know if I would ever get the opportunity to play for the US. So it's like I'm giving up an amazing opportunity to play at the international level, go to a World Cup, potentially go to an Olympics with Mexico, and be a mainstay and a consistent person on that team, making, I would hope, like roster after roster for something that literally may not happen.
Yeah.
Like it was obviously making the US team is never guaranteed for anyone, but it certainly was not a guarantee for me. And everybody around me who I really cared about their opinions, they weren't necessarily saying like, you
Go
know
do it.
what? No, they were actually the opposite. They were like, you should just play for Mexico. And I'm like, what's happening? Does no one believe in me? Like, I know what I'm capable of. So I just had to really like remind myself that I know what I'm able to do. And so obviously like were bumps along the way, as you know, and I had to make some decisions and I had to make hard decisions and I had to
Yeah.
start making like good choices off the field. And then eventually I got called in 2017, and that followed the year where it was my first year ever playing soccer year round. It
Yep.
was 2017. I had played with the Red Stars for 6 months, and then I went and played in Australia. And that was the first year in my whole life that I was really able to like focus on only soccer, actually put in like work on the field to get better technically, because that is where I lacked. I was not good enough technically. I just was not. And so once I was able to focus on that for a year, then I think you saw a a change in the way that I played, which is obviously why I eventually got called in under Jill in 2017 and then had to make the one time switch. And I remember Jill
Right.
was like, she goes, I'm going to call you in, but you have to know that you will not be able to go play with Mexico again. And I so clearly was like, I know. And I'm
Yeah,
ready.
I've been
I'm
waiting
ready.
for
Like,
this. Well, I actually
yes.
remember being in that camp with you when you got called in and we were waiting for FIFA to approve the request to change national associations. Was there ever any doubt that they would say yes? Like, were you anxious about FIFA's ruling? Or do you remember just being like, it's going to go through and I'm here? And how did you feel when that was all going on?
I had more anxiety about that earlier. So when I had told Mexico I didn't want to continue going into camps, I was not sure because I was getting mixed messages from many people that like I was already cap tied, that I wasn't. And then someone would say, no, you are. And then I wasn't. So I was kind of like, oh shit, like can I not play for the US? Like, that was when I had anxiety about it and I wasn't sure. But then, Jerry really helped me and asked around, and he confirmed that I was able to make the one time switch. So fast forward to 2017, I knew that was going to happen, so I didn't have anxiety about it. And I figured that if I was at camp, that
Yeah,
wasn't
that they
for
knew
yeah,
they knew it was
they
going to be
had to
fine.
know, right?
Well, so you got your first cap September 15th, 2017, becoming, I'm pretty sure, the first player ever to play for and against the U.S. women's national team. When you put on the U.S. jersey for the first time, did you feel in that moment like, okay, I just achieved this lifelong childhood dream? Or did you instead feel like, I'm just getting started, now I have to really like get to work? Or both?
Oh, good question. I think I probably felt like a little bit of both. I
Yeah.
think in that moment, I really tried to like savor it. And back then, I was pretty young and I don't think I really understood my emotions at that point. So I remember feeling very, very nervous when I stepped on the field. And actually, like, I wasn't quite sure if I was even going to get any minutes. And then there was an injury. And so I went in at like the 50th minute, which obviously, when, second half subs are being made, it's usually later.
Yeah.
And so I went in at the 50th minute thinking like, oh shit, okay, it's time. I remember that day like it was yesterday. And I remember you came up to me afterwards and you were like, Sophia, you played so well. I was like, Sam, no,
Oh.
no, I didn't, but thank you so much. I was like, thanks. That means everything to me. But I think, yeah, I felt a little bit of both. I felt like this is so surreal and like this, I proved everybody wrong. But then I also had the mindset of like, whoa, this is not like a guarantee just because I got my first cap. Because the next game I didn't dress. And I think,
That's
I
how it
know,
goes.
but exactly, it's how it goes. That's that environment. But, it was quick. It's like I was
Yeah.
on this high and then it's like I wasn't dressing and I was like, oh, this is going to be a journey.
Yeah.
But
I
it's not
know.
easy. You guys, I mean, the national team makes it look effortless. And there have been so many players who have just been on that team for so long. But that was never going to be my journey. I was never someone who was with the youth national teams all the time. I, was never someone that anyone predicted to be on the national team. So I knew I wasn't just going to be someone who was like going to go in and know, like make every roster every month. Like that wasn't going to be me. And I learned that very quickly.
Yeah, I can relate for sure. It is a really difficult place to be. And I think that you had another kind of unique situation going on where like you had mentioned, you had been playing as a nine and as a forward, midfielder, and attacking player. And then you were told that you had a better chance of making the national team as an outside back. So you actually left Chicago, where you had been having such incredible success in the NWSL. You went to Houston and you went there to play outside back. You weren't really playing outside back there either. And I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier, like you made a sacrifice to maybe not even get to play on the national team. And I see that you did this again with your willingness to move clubs and move cities and pack up your life with no guarantee that the national team would ever say, yes, you've done it, you've made it, you're here, you're our outside back. Can you just talk a little bit about that feeling of like, and I know this feeling really well, like I would do anything for you, but the national team doesn't necessarily reciprocate.
Taking me back to that time is so interesting because I've grown so much. And all of these things we're talking about and going over, I mean, they're the reason that I am like who I am today and why I feel like I have actually such a strong mindset. So there's no like regrets or feeling like, oh, wow, that was really unfair. I mean, at the time back in 2018, I felt like, whew, this is really not ideal, which I'll get into. But like now I'm actually so thankful that all of that happened truly because it really made me realize that I have to really focus on the things that I can control
Mm-hmm.
versus the things I can't control because I don't think people realize how many of those things are just not in your control.
Mm-hmm.
So many things were not in control at that time. But I've learned that and I've been constantly working on that for years
Mm-hmm.
because of these situations. So like, let's go back to it a little bit. As you mentioned, I'm playing forward on Chicago and I'm with the US team for like a year and a half. Okay. But the thing is that I'm not playing outside back at the club level. So I'm getting called into camp. I'm performing well, for being in a position I've literally never played once in my life. It was challenging because I would go into this environment that's already just one of the hardest environments to be in, most competitive environments to be in, especially back in 2017, and trying to play a position that I've never played. So I understand why Jill then told me that she wasn't going to call me in anymore because I'm not playing outside back. Rory would not play me at outside back. And so
Rory
this
was the coach of your Chicago team.
Rory was indeed my coach in Chicago, and he would certainly not play me at outside back. So then I just said, okay, I'm going to sacrifice, make this decision to go to Houston, who at the time was at the very, like, was pretty low on the table, and Chicago was top. We had made it to playoffs 3 years in a row, made it to the final. Like we were a very good team. And so it seemed hard to make that decision, but I just thought, wow, well, I need to do everything that I can do in my control. So I asked for a trade thinking that I'd be playing outside back, which I did not. I didn't even spend 1 minute there, not one training, not one game. I was playing the 10. And it's funny because I actually feel like I was playing sick. Like I was playing well at the 10. And I just think Jill had already decided that, she wasn't going to move forward with me because she saw me as an outside back and I wasn't getting time there at the club level. So I went to Houston, and then obviously the 2019 World Cup happens, and I knew I wasn't going to make that team. And then, I instantly think, okay, 2023, and how am I going to get there? I'm going to get there by playing outside back. I already knew that. I knew that was my only way, especially after Jill had said that to me. It was very clear that was my only way of making the team. And so when the season ended with Houston, I knew I needed to go get games at outside back. And unfortunately, no one in the NWSL was going to play me there. No one. My agent had
Why
talked
and
to every.
why? Why? Because you were so good at midfield.
Well, I think because, well, why wouldn't they play me at outside back? I think
Yeah.
it's because I scored goals back in the day. So why? I mean, I was the lead. I mean, I was always, with Kristen Press and being the leading goal scorer for Chicago. So I think people were just like, why would we do that? Like, at the end of the day, it's a business. So like, I get it. I'm not taking it personal. And also like, I had never played there. So I understand, but I knew that I had to get minutes at outside back. So I had actually played in Australia a couple years before for Adelaide, and I was a forward, also had scored in the W League. And then I reached out to some of the clubs and said, I want to come back, but only if you play me at outside back. And there was only one club who agreed to do that, and it was Sydney. And so I went to Sydney. I played outside back for 14 games.
And you guys
Uh,
won?
and we won, and I scored in the semifinal and the final.
You're doing both.
Exactly. So, and honestly, that is like a decision that I'm so happy that I made because I wanted to stay home. I wanted to be with my family. I wanted to be with my dogs. I didn't want to go back to Australia, but I just thought, okay, you know what? I actually really liked playing there and I need to get minutes there. And so I went there and I got minutes there and I felt comfortable because playing defender, like, it's taken me a long time to understand positioning, get better at 1v1 defending. I mean, I think so much of the criticism surrounding me as a player was that my defense was never good enough. That's always what I dealt with when I was even on the national team. And that was the feedback I was given that I struggled defensively. But that takes some time, But I was so happy that I went to Australia because I went back to the NWSL. I started playing forward again in midfield for the Rain. And then Laura came back. And that's when we had, Eugenie from the French national team, Maro from Germany. And there was not room for me as an attacker anymore. And she said, we're going to move you to outside back. Are you cool with that? And I said, I'm cool with that because I had experience and
Yeah.
I knew that I was going to feel confident and comfortable playing outside back because I went to Australia and played. So I have a lot of like gratitude towards the W League, especially Sydney
Yeah.
for like letting me do that. And I think it like all was full circle. I scored in the semifinal final, we won. So it was like, it was mutually beneficial. And then I got back on the national team.
It all, of course, is winding and up and down. And I'm sure there were a lot of painful moments in there. But it did result in you getting called back in, you make the World Cup team in 2023. Obviously, I know that that tournament in some ways wasn't like a dream come true, but did it feel like this big moment of accomplishment for you? I remember like making the World Cup roster in 2019 was its own thing. It was its own accomplishment separate from the result of the tournament. How do you reflect now on this whole journey until 2023 and making that roster?
I mean, I try really hard not to be too attached by like the outcome. Like I really, really try my hardest to like really enjoy the process. And, that just works for me. It just does. So, but making the World Cup team was, I mean, it was so legit. Like making the national team is so hard. Some
Mm-hmm.
people never get that opportunity. And so for me to think, could I get this opportunity again? Because I already had it back in 2017 and it didn't work out the way that I wanted to. Can I do this again? I don't know if this is true, but I felt like I wasn't even in the pool up
Mm-hmm.
until like once I got out in 18. I wasn't really in the pool until 21 when I got switched to outside back. I thought, wow, like, okay, let's have realistic goals here. Is it realistic for me to make this team again? And like, it wasn't until Laura came back and moved me to outside back. And then obviously I was assisting and doing well and performing. And I really felt like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it wasn't the easiest journey. There were definitely times where I was like, am I not going to make this team? Like I had been getting called in for 2 years, but as a
Oh, I
bubble
know.
player, exactly, exactly.
You
Well,
could be a
and
starter, and it's just like, I don't know what they're thinking. They could be thinking anything.
it's wild.
Who
Like no
knows?
matter, it's a wild environment, and especially leading up to like a big roster like that. But so it wasn't clear if I was going to make that team. Obviously at the moment the roster was announced, those couple days surrounding that announcement were amazing. Like
Yeah.
honestly, the highest of highs, such a cool experience. And like you said, was it the World Cup of my dreams? Like, no. I'm really, really proud of myself that I went to the World Cup. And
You should be.
yeah. Oh my gosh, thank you so much. No, I'm so proud. And it takes me back to like, I don't think, back to what you said about always going under the radar. I don't think that I was meant to honestly do like a lot of things that I've accomplished in my career. And I could be sad about like not being on the national team now or not going to the Olympics. But I tend to not focus on the things that I do not have and like the negatives. I try really hard not to do that. Instead, it feels better for me to be like, I went to a World Cup. That is going to be on my resume forever. That is something that I'm so proud of. That is just like all encompassing to everything that I've been through since I was 7 years old playing in Boise, Idaho. Like there's been so many roadblocks and so many things that got in the way. And I did it. And I did it. And that's sick, you know?
Yeah, I know. It through the whole journey it sounds like you kind of took over control. I think like I talk about this a lot where a lot of our careers we kind of feel like it's not up to us. Like there's not a lot of decisions that you actually get to make. You get drafted to a place, you get called in or you don't. Like, yes, there are things that you can control, but especially as we were kind of coming up, I didn't feel a lot of like agency over my decision making. And I actually feel like at every opportunity you got, you made, whether it was an easy decision, a hard decision, a decision with guaranteed success at the end of it or not, you kind of like took the reins of your own life and your own career. And I think that that's kind of what brings us to now. You're on loan in France. You're playing for Lyon, Europe's most historically successful club in the women's side. I know that this relationship kind of started when OL Reign was connected and you got to go and train in the off season. So I just want to hear a little bit about this opportunity that you again have like taken ownership of and put yourself in this position. What made you so hungry to come back to Lyon and have this abroad experience?
Well, I'll be so honest. I was shocked. Like I was like, I just wasn't expecting it. And I think that's something else I actually want to say. Like throughout my career, I feel like when I really just like let go of things, then it all worked out the way that it was supposed to. Because I can go back to a time when like all of you guys were going to Europe. You were at City, Abby, Rose, like all these players around my age were getting the opportunity to go play for a big club in Europe. And like I was never offered that opportunity. It just is what it is. But it was at times, like especially back in the day when I don't feel like I'd worked on my mental side as much. Like it was easy to wish, like, oh, I wish that was me. Like I want to go do that. And then I realized that it wasn't going to happen. And I was at peace with that and I was okay with that. And like, yeah, I did come 4 years ago to train with OL, which was a really cool experience. I mean, Seattle mentioned if a few of us wanted to come train. And I was like, I mean, that's another example of me. I feel like, yeah, taking an opportunity when it was given, like, yeah, of course I'd want to go train with Lyon. I mean, I would love to see like what an environment like that would be like. And so it is nice that I did that because it made this transition a lot easier, a lot more comfortable. I knew most of the girls on the team and then obviously had played with a few in Seattle back in 21. So I had an idea of what it would be like. And I remember thinking back then, gosh, I really want to play in Europe. And then, as I mentioned, it just was never, I just never felt like it was going to happen to me. And as everyone knows, I signed a longer deal with Seattle. I committed to playing in Seattle. I mean, in fact, I would say that I committed to playing with Seattle for the rest of my career. I mean, I that's kind of where I'm at. I love Seattle. It's going to be my forever home. I'm a Pacific Northwest girl. Like I'm like literally going to live in Seattle forever. I love it. So making the decision to come to Lyon was extremely difficult because I didn't want to leave somewhere I loved. We
Mm-hmm.
were mid-season pushing for playoffs. It wasn't the easiest of years. So, being someone that's a veteran on the team, and I would like to
Yeah.
think of myself as a leader on the team, leaving at that time seemed very uncomfortable and like honestly selfish. I did feel selfish and like my teammates know I felt that way. And like, thank God I had teammates who were like, do what's best for you. Like, if anyone else had this opportunity, like, we would encourage them to do it as well. So yeah, I was shocked when I had the opportunity to come here when my agent had, called me and said Leon wants to discuss possibly having you come here. I was like, what's happening? But I had really let go. And I was like, the timing was a little weird for me because I was 31, not getting called into the national team. I just was confused. But then I thought, like, no, I'm not confused. Like, someone is watching me play. And at that moment, I was playing well. I feel like actually before the World Cup, I wasn't really playing my best,
Mm-hmm.
which is funny because I made the World Cup team. And then I actually feel like after the World Cup, I started playing like myself again. And then I wasn't getting noticed by the national team at all, which it's just interesting how that happens. But I felt secure and confident about how I was playing. And I just had to remind myself, like, there's a reason Leon is wanting me to sign with them. And so when I was making that decision, I just asked myself, like, what do I love about being a professional soccer player? And there are so many things, but one of those things is that I just love to I just like to get better. I like
Yeah.
to I like to grow and I've been through so many hard and uncomfortable situations and every time I go through that I just grow and like there's something so satisfying about that. And so even though it was a risk coming here, I wasn't sure what it was going to look like, if I was going to play. I was leaving what was so comfortable for me. I just asked myself, like, I think I would regret not going and like experiencing living in another country, another league, playing in Champions League,
Mm-hmm.
playing just with some of the best players, honestly, is something that I definitely don't take for granted every day as I step on like the training facility. I'm like, these players are so good. Although it was a difficult decision, I'm so happy that I decided to come. And it's short. It's a short loan. I'll be back. I'll be back in the summer. And, like I said earlier as well, like I've been in the NWSL for so long and I've loved that I've, have seen the evolution and the growth of the NWSL. And that's something that it's so cool to look back on, but I wanted to do something different, you
It's
know?
so cool. When I look back on my career as well, I think thank God I went to Man City when I did because otherwise my career got cut short and I might have never had the opportunity to play abroad. And so I think when these opportunities come up, I love that you're saying yes to things, you're trusting your gut, going with what you feel is best for you and doing what you love about this job, which is getting better and growing. What will you take with you from this journey in France that you want to bring back to the NWSL with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be back in June. Hopefully, we make it far in Champions League. I mean, that's the goal. I think we have the team. We have the team to go very far and to hopefully win. There are a lot of good teams, so you never know. But I'll be back in June, and then I'm unable to play actually until the transfer window opens. But we have no games in July, so I won't be back in the NWSL until August. Like, I love being here and I love the competitive environment and training. Like I said, with the players that I train with every day, like, it is an experience, and I know I'm getting better. Like, I am getting better and I'm loving it so much. And so I think like I will bring just what I'm learning here and like the confidence that I'm gaining here playing with these players. And just I've proven to myself that I can play and perform here, which is the most important to me. I feel like the last couple of years, especially with Seattle, we haven't been, performing at the level that we want to. And so I want to come back to Seattle and, up the level and make sure that we're performing, not just myself, but the team is performing at their best, and we make playoffs and we hopefully bring a trophy home, in the last few years that I'm playing. That's definitely like a goal of mine. I'm also going to get married in June, so I'm very excited about that. Yeah, I think like leaving home and leaving Seattle and being here has made me just appreciate what I have there, and I'm never going to take that for granted. And playing in the NWSL and, the competitive games week in and week out, like, that's something that I do miss, and that I think the NWSL is so, fun and
Mm-hmm.
competitive, and that's something that I can't wait to get back to, definitely. But I think I'll take a lot from being here, and I'm definitely happy that I came here, but I am itching to come back to Seattle.
And get some Sweetgreen, it sounds like. Bring it
I
all
know.
the way full circle back.
I
I hope
know.
you get Sweetgreen right when you get back. So if I could keep you here all day, our paths really have run like very close next to each other. We've played together a lot, against each other a lot, but you've always really inspired me again with your
Mm,
attitude and your mindset and your ability really to see opportunities for what they are and say yes to them and take advantage of them. So I'm so grateful that we could have this conversation. I think that everybody listening will really, really enjoy it. I feel really inspired and I'm rooting for you. I'm excited for the rest of
oh
your
my
season with Lyon. I'm
gosh.
excited to have you back in the US.
Oh, Sam, I really appreciate that. I mean, the feelings are mutual. I feel like we've been just like, coasting
I
next to
know.
each other the whole time. So it is like, it's so great to see you doing this too. You're
Oh,
such a good little podcaster. Who
I'm
knew?
I'm trying. So I had to do I had to do something. But I am newly a Seattle Reign fan because Lynn Williams.
Oh my goodness. I can't
So
believe we didn't even talk about
I
this.
know, but so hopefully I'll be out to some games and maybe we can hang out.
Yes, I would love that. And you can meet my dogs.
Oh my God, I would love that so much. Thank you so much again for doing this. It was so great.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome.
Thank you all so much for listening. I literally could have yapped it up with Soph all day long. Sometimes when I do these interviews with my friends, I like genuinely forget that we're doing a podcast and I just feel like we're at coffee or like on a walk together. I love chatting with Soph so much and I'm so happy that she has such a great perspective on her whole journey and I'm always rooting for her. Speaking of friends coming on the pod, I'm very excited to announce that next week's guest is U.S. Women's National Team captain Lindsey Horan. We just caught up ahead of the She Believes tournament, and I got the scoop on her wedding. And while I can't say we like straight up cried, there were tears in both of our eyes forming at multiple times. So make sure to tune in next week to Good Vibes with Becky Sauerbrunn on Tuesday. Then Sammy Banana Phone, the She Believes preview on Wednesday. Then we'll give you Lindsey Horan on Friendlies on Thursday. And if you aren't sick of me by that point, tune into the Women's Game YouTube channel right after the U.S. Women's National Team takes on Colombia for a live reaction show. We have literally such an exciting co-host, but I don't want to jinx it. So just trust me, you don't want to miss it. Thank you all so much for being here, and we'll see you soon.